This weather kind of reminds me of sort of like Maine in the fall.
Oh yeah, totally. It reminded me when I was walking out. I was like, man, this is like Ireland.
Oh yeah, kind of.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, are you still going up to Maine like every year?
I haven't been up there in a little while now.
Yeah.
It's been, last time we were up there was 3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I'd like to go back though.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
gorgeous.
for painting, it's great. All right, so we are out at Stow Lake in San Francisco, Golden Gate Park. I'm here with my friend Pete St. John. You might remember him from previous videos.
Hello.
And we're just taking a look, trying to decide what to paint. So here's the scene we're looking at. I'm sort of interested in painting reflections today, and obviously some of those distant cypress trees. Because it's overcast, not a lot of variation in the color, so I'm going to mostly be focusing on shapes. And so what are you thinking, Pete? You're going to work with this same scene?
Yeah, I'm looking at the same thing. I'm thinking those two masses, kind of dynamic shapes of trees over there.
Okay.
And you're right. There's not a lot of color variation, so it's more tonal.
Yeah, kind of a tonal approach.
Yeah, yeah.
But I like the fact that there's like really these shapes are really strong and simple, which that's always fun.
Good. Means we'll get it done in 10 minutes.
That's right. We'll knock it out in no time. All right. So Pete, you're working on an 11 by 14 today.
Yeah. 11 by 14 is kind of my default travel size, and it works out pretty good.
I noticed you got the Raymar,
Yep.
wet panel carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And do you pack this with you as well? This obviously this palette.
Yeah, I pack it with me, but increasingly I'm thinking I'm not going to be even packing this, because more and more I use
a handheld palette.
Yeah. In this I actually have paints.
Oh, you keep your. Oh, I see.
Right.
I see.
So at some point I want to be able to just mount it and just be able to work off of this and not have to carry this around when I paint.
Yeah,
So,
that would
yeah,
simplify
but I love
things.
this. I love the box.
It's nice because you can just fold it up, throw it in your bag, and off you go. All right, so I've got the Anderson easel, and I'm going to be working on a 16 by 24 inch panel today. The first question is, where do I want the water line? And I'm thinking I'm going to start just above the center. Then I've got some shapes for the trees here. I'm just going to play with shapes. And I'm not going to stay completely true to what I'm seeing, but close. And I'm squinting at the scene to simplify the shapes. I'm sort of considering having something in the foreground, possibly, like maybe over here, like that, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that at this point. Using this burnt sienna here, going to indicate the dark masses. One thing I like about a composition like this is it's fairly simple. The shapes are simple, and therefore I can kind of focus on, just the subtle color shifts within these simple shapes. All right, we'll see. I'll put this in the foreground just for now to see how I like it. I can always remove it. And that's the basic compositional idea right there. All right, so I've got the big shapes in place, and now I'm trying to be a bit more specific with the shapes, but not get into too much detail. I'm thinking of having layers here. These here in the foreground, but then in the distance there are some eucalyptus trees. So I will use atmospheric perspective to push them back, probably make them sort of a gray-green. And I'm just using a worn-out number 4 natural bristle flat to do my sketch. All right, so I've got a mixture of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. And I want to establish the water line first. I think I want to have the water line come down at a slight angle like this, so it's not completely straight across. Maybe even a little bit more dramatic than that. And I don't want this to be a perfectly straight line either. So I think that's close enough. All right, so you're going vertical here.
Yep.
Toned in burnt sienna, which is nice because now you get some orange tones in what's, basically a gray-green sort of scene.
Yeah, yeah. And I decided to go vertical because, as we were saying, I'm working on a smaller panel, and what I found is it can get really, really frustrating when you're trying to take in something that's, you know, somewhat extraordinary in its own way, big trees and things like that.
The grand vista.
Yeah, grand. That's what I was looking for. And trying to. So I've decided to, instead of capturing as much as I can on the horizon, I'm going to really focus in on these great vertical shapes.
I try to do that too. Whenever I'm painting on something smaller, like a zoomed in view as opposed to a distant view, I think that's great. All right, so I decided to block in the shapes using this reddish color. I do want to leave some of this underpainting or this sketch. I want some of that burnt sienna to be visible in the finished painting. All right, this tree over here is pretty dark, and I want to be sure to leave some sky holes in the trees. Oftentimes I'll just kind of sketch out where I think the trunks are and then go over with the foliage, kind of like that. Okay, so now I've got a dark greenish mixture and kind of putting in these reflections. Most of the time when I paint reflections, I keep the strokes vertical, and I try to keep some transparency in the reflections as well. The edges tend to be soft too. The edges of the reflections tend to be soft, unless you've got a completely still body of water to work with. All right, next I'm going to put in some warm green here for these plants in the foreground. And the value of these plants is going to be similar to the reflections, which actually could be a good thing. And therefore, this will seem like a united shape. But then if you look closer, you'll see that there's some sort of grass or plants in the foreground. That's the idea anyway. All right, I'm using sort of a gray-green color to put in some distant eucalyptus trees, because I like the idea of having a foreground and then the midground here and then something off in the distance. I'm going to keep the values and colors of these distant trees very similar, so not a lot of variety off in the distance here. It's really fun painting on a day like this where the light is stable. It's kind of as close as it gets to being a relaxing experience. Painting is always challenging, isn't that right, Pete? It's a numbers game. You got to do a ton to get the good ones.
Yeah, I agree. If you could reach perfection, it would really get boring quick.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The idea with, I mean, what I've loved about painting is you never get there.
But yeah, in the trying, you do some decent stuff once in a while.
Once in a while.
Right?
Once in a while.
All right, so I've got titanium white and ultramarine blue, and I've grayed it down with some just random gray from the palette. Even though this panel is fairly large, already I'm feeling like some of these shapes are pretty small. And I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat here. And this brush is pretty new, so the bristles are long, they hold a lot of paint, so I can cover the panel fairly quickly. Okay, so the reflected sky has some green in it, so, and it's a little bit darker in value than the sky is, so I've added a bit more blue and a touch of green that was already on my palette. I feel like I want to change up this shape a little bit, break it up a little. There's also bits of sky coming through. All right, in the foreground there's some more saturated greens, and once the whole thing is blocked in, then I'm going to be more specific with the colors, but I do want to be sure not to break up the overall design. This is not a scene that I would typically be drawn to, which is kind of fun. Like, I like the idea of doing paintings that are a little bit outside of the norm for me. But this still has all the abstract potential of, you know, paintings that I like to do, like say of the ocean or that sort of thing. I can change this around however I want to create an interesting or pleasing abstract pattern. All right, so now I'm working dark to light using thicker paint. And I'm using a number 6 synthetic flat, and I'm contemplating using this painting or this brush for the whole painting in order to create some sort of continuity. I'm not exactly sure what I want here, like how I want the brushwork to, you know, what sort of brushwork I want to use. Maybe vertical strokes in the trees. Putting some thick paint on these distant trees and sticking with these vertical strokes here. And I'm painting without my glasses on, so this all looks pretty blurry, which is good. I don't want to get too careful. And then towards the end, I'll probably put my glasses on and then do minor cleanup. Painting without the glasses kind of forces me, it's like a forced squint. I can only see big shapes. And I may end up leaving a bit of the alizarin crimson in here. Okay, it looks like you got your darks established there. Got this one cypress and then this tall cypress over there.
Yeah,
so
and
these
I pushed
two
them
trees.
a little closer to each other so that they're both in the picture.
It looks like you got alizarin crimson in here as well.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of leaving some alizarin just to get the red, you know, some red into the in the painting, you know, to complement all the greens. Okay, I feel like I want to have some warmer tones in here, some greens that have a lot of red in them. So I've mixed in quite a bit of alizarin crimson in here so that the painting isn't just completely gray. I want echoes of that red in other areas as well. Maybe over here. That might be too saturated, I'm not sure. Been walking back a lot to see how, you know, see how these different colors and shapes are working from a distance. All right, I'm adding thicker strokes in the water as well, but I want to leave some of the scrub in here. And so I'm, you know, have areas of thick and thin. I've painted a few ripples across the surface, but I don't want to overdo it. Simple shapes, looking good. The key is having soft edges to the reflections.
Right. And
then it plays against the harder edges of the things that are being reflected.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reflections are reading from here, for sure. All right, so here is what I finished up with. My main goal with this painting was to create convincing reflections and then also hopefully create a sense of depth as well. As for the reflections, I went with vertical strokes for the dark reflected trees and then horizontal strokes for the reflected sky. I try to keep the dark vertical strokes somewhat transparent and very loose and sketchy, no definition at all, and then especially keep the edges soft. And then for the horizontal strokes, I kind of went thicker with these strokes and then did put a few horizontal sky reflections for ripples across the dark portions, but again, don't want to go overboard on that because it can start looking sort of cheesy, so I only just add a few of those. And as for creating depth, I decided to include some distant eucalyptus trees here and then also include a bit of foreground. All right, so Pete and I had a great time painting at Stow Lake. It's been a while since I painted with Pete, and it's been a while since I painted at Stow Lake. It's one of my favorite places in San Francisco to paint. Lots of positive interactions with people, which I always enjoy. And it was just nice to catch up with Pete again. I will put a link to Pete's Instagram and his YouTube channel down below. And then, as usual, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's a Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. So check it out. Other than that, stay creative. See you guys in the next video.
So I have this like distinct memory. I couldn't have been more than 2. But I have this distinct memory of my mom giving me a shoebox. Because, you know, when you're a kid, you just like simple things like that. She gave me a shoebox, and there was a, like one of those squeeze bottles of Elmer's glue. and that's all I had. And I started like squeezing the glue into the box, but I have this vivid memory of thinking I was making the court of a king. So I was like squeezing it out and making like the throne and all this stuff, and I could see it, right? But of course it's just, you know, layers of glue. But it's that kind of feeling I want to get back. Like,
that sort of simple, childlike approach to creativity.
I agree.